Hello everybody and welcome to Amphlett Reviews, back with a Japanese deep dive into some V Cinema Essentials collection. Thanks to Arrow Video for sending me the test disc, which I'm currently going through at the moment. And very similar to what I've done with Crime Hunter, I'll be talking about the film itself and the special features alongside it. So I'm currently on disc 1. I've already done a previous video for Crime Hunter, so if you're curious about that video, there will be a playlist in the description below, and we'll have all the films from this edition as I stack them up, as I review them and talk about them. The box set itself comes on the 20th of April 2025. It's available on the Arrow Video store, HMV, Amazon, all the good places for good retailers. Also, you can watch it on the Arrow Video channel official website. Or not, does include a 7-day free trial, or if you've been picking up a lot of the other Arrow editions, you tend to get a 30-day free trial as well. So there's plenty of opportunity to check out these films. As always on this channel, whether it's a Hong Kong movie, whether it's a Japanese film, I'm seeing these for the very first time, going in blind, having no expectations, knowing very little about the actual film, who the directors are, the cast, the story, the synopsis, just kind of seeing what these films have to offer and giving you an honest reflection of the films themselves and my thoughts and opinions. And hope you guys enjoy that, and hope you enjoy me on this journey through the V Cinema Essentials collection. So without further ado, let's dive into the movie review itself. And for this video, we're talking about Chinpira, Zoom Goes the Bullet, released in 1990, directed by Banmei Takahashi, which in this time around I am familiar with this director, as I've seen 2 of his previous films. I didn't know he directed this film, which makes a lot more sense after watching it and diving into some of the kind of behind the scenes of the extra special features and behind the scenes in terms of the film itself. The director did Door 1 and 2, which did get a third window release a little while back. I watched both of these films, funny enough, though, on Shudder, because I wasn't too sure about them, a little bit on the fence. And while I didn't like the first Door film, I thought it had a really good idea, but kind of got lost in its weird editing and tone and just didn't really pay off. It's just very mean-spirited and just, it's a bit of a mess of a film. It has a good intention in terms of making a really kind of an intense film, but kind of falls apart towards the kind of the second and third act as it goes along. Where Door 2, on the other hand, I think is really underrated and really, really good. And I felt it was like a Secret Life of a Diary type situation, like a girlfriend experience type film, but from a Hong Kong experience. And I thought it was the better version of Tokyo Decadence, or so a little while ago, which I have reviewed on the channel. I thought it was the equivalent, a better version of that same idea, where they're more Hong Kong cinema, but just have some Japanese kind of influence as well at the same time. So much more interesting character compared to Tokyo Decadence. I just think it was a lot more of an interesting journey. This director is known for doing pink films for Japanese cinema, which makes sense in terms of him flipping between doing more yakuza films, slight action, more pink-based, karate-based films, and dramas, and some samurai-based ones. So definitely quite an interesting director that's kind of dipped his toe in different genres. And after watching the special features, the director talking about the actual film, which is fantastic to see him, still around and giving a bit of an insight into his experience, gives me a bit more of an understanding of who this director is and what his intentions is in making these films. And, compared to some of the other kind of big ones like Kenji Fukusaka and all those other big players in Japanese cinema during that time period. And Chinpira, Zoom Goes the Bullet was absolutely fantastic, sensational, I would say, just really incredible. Maybe it hit me on the right way. Maybe I'm in a good mood. Maybe because I've seen a backdrop of Kenji Fukusaka films, a bit more understanding of kind of like Japanese cinema during the kind of 60s all the way up to the 90s at this point, and having a bit more understanding of that culture and that kind of time period and how these films were made and the studios that were involved, and having such a fantastic sense of releases from not just Arrow, but also Radiance and other distributions that are giving these films a second chance in terms of the Blu-ray editions. It's really cool to see a film like this, and I wasn't really expecting the film to deliver this type of yakuza-based film. Yes, you heard me, it is a yakuza film from 1990. It's part of the V Cinema lineup, as mentioned in my previous video. This is Toei's kind of little experiment in terms of making some money, giving half the budget essentially that you usually would go from a Kenji Fukusaka type film, and giving it to some directors and upcoming talent and some great new stars. And hey, go make a film. You got a script, go make a film. Hopefully we'll make some money on the direct VHS kind of sales. And that was the business model for the very early 90s in terms of having a reasonable amount of budget, having some new upcoming stars and directors that would be some established, some well-known, some not so known, and just giving up people opportunities to make some really fun movies, because the state of Japanese cinema during that time, which is something that we'll talk a little bit more on the special features side, was kind of dead in the water. You know, Kenji Fukusaka made his Battle of Honor movies, which it seems to all come back to these type of movies. You know, Kenji Fukusaka dominated the cinema. He created some of the best kind of, you know, yakuza epics of all time, and basically that's it. You know, no one can top it. Everyone was kind of done and bored, and I think the best were delivered. And you know, where do you go then? And you know, obviously other foreign action movies like Die Hard, Tomorrow were coming in, dominating the cinema in terms of the foreign market. So it definitely was room for Japanese cinema to do something creative and fun and a little bit more passion, and you know, to have a, you know, to be a bit more experimental. And this is where you start to see during this kind of time period, and it lines up a lot more in terms of what I have seen previously to in terms of being a milestone, not just for V cinema, but just Japanese cinema as a whole, because this film is really fantastic. The basic synopsis for this film: you've got a character called Junko, played by Shirakawa. He is absolutely fantastic in this film. Him especially really is carrying the film in the sense of a character kind of journey in terms of, you know, where he starts to where he ends, and which is trying to be a yakuza gang member, essentially. This is a film that is sort of mocking, but not in a kind of a goofy slapstick way, but more just kind of showing the kind of the age and the kind of, you know, the unappealing nature of a yakuza film, but not done in like in a violent or nasty Kenji Fukusaka way, but more of a, you know, it's kind of a joke, you know, a character, which is our main character in the film, which is so desperately trying to be cool and trying to be edgy and just kind of picking up lines that just sound so artificial and so unrealistic. And it's a bit of a joke and a bit of a running theme for the film. There's even a quote saying, "Did you get that from a Yakuza manual?" You know, are you saying that because, you know, you think you're badass or hard? You know, it's a character that's so desperately trying to be a cool gangster, and all these characters are practically kind of pathetic or wimps or lame or just, you know, actual normal people, you know, where the loyalty of being Yakuza compared to, like, you know, the early days where we were samurai, whether it's during the early 60s, after World War II. It's very different types of time periods. We've seen this quite a few times now within many of the films, and I think it's a very interesting one to explore that within a 90s kind of setting, and what does it mean to be a Japanese Yakuza for the 90s. And I'm sure there is, you know, very serious kind of, you know, real life based true stories, and I'm sure there is more serious films that have been made in kind of, you know, the 90s kind of thing in terms of Yakuza films, but I don't think I've seen a Yakuza film like this made in a certain type of way with a sense of humor that is very much kind of mocking, but not, again, not being over comedic or over slapstick, but just kind of, you know, showing it up for what it is. You know, you're trying to do a magic trick and then the trick's being revealed and it's just like, you're a bit of a fool, aren't you? But it's kind of just grounded at the same time. It's got that kind of arts house kind of style and flavor to it. And being the fact you got this director which is known for doing pink films, and being the fact that I've seen Door 1 and 2, you can do tension very well, you can do the erotic stuff very, very well, and you can also do good staging, good cinematography. You could have really good lighting and good music choices that really kind of reflect the character's kind of mood. And, you know, I think his directing in this film is probably the best that I've seen him. As the film goes along, he gets an opportunity to kind of prove himself and basically be the fall guy, someone who basically is essentially going to pick up a gun, kill a rival gang member, take the fall, go to prison for basically 10 years. Hey, we ever heard this before? And when he gets out, essentially will have over $1 million kind of dollars essentially in his pocket. So essentially go and kill someone, take the fall, go and serve your 10-year sentence in prison potentially, we'll pay you installments kind of thing, and when you get out you get some more money, and yeah, sacrifice 10 years of your life for the cause, for the Yakuza family essentially. And that's the dilemma the character goes through for most of the film. He's so eager and so desperate to please the Yakuza family, where he gets an opportunity to do so. It's quite amusing and quite funny, and it's done in a really clever, very smart way, where even the two other characters that he's with, the other two more seasonal gangsters, also are trying to get out of it. And this is kind of a known tricks and turns where, like, one of them basically kind of shoots themselves in the guts to try and get out of it. He's in hospital. One overdoses on drugs to kind of get out of it, and it all ends up falling on him to basically take the rap and take the fall, because no one wants to do that in this kind of day and age during kind of 90s kind of Japanese kind of landscape. You know, why would you want to sacrifice 10 years of your life, especially being a young person in his prime, someone who's just, you know, and again, just wants to be seen, wants to be heard. And that is something that is constantly talked about within Japanese culture and many films, not just within these yakuza type films, but also in many kind of Japanese kind of horror and more the J-horror based kind of films, which is kind of discussed and gone into this idea of kind of being seen and heard and being valued and being kind of, wanting to be accepted essentially. And this character is by nature a good-hearted person, someone who just wants a bit of a connection essentially. We have the love interest in this film played by the wonderful Chikako Yoyama, which I hope I said that correctly, terrible pronunciations. But the reason why I have Robotrix on the shelf is basically she was in that film previously. This actress also was in Door 2, which is the main leading character in that, and she's also in this film as well in terms of Zoom Goes the Bullet. And this is the third performance I've seen of this actress. And just look at our main character in the film, I think she's just as important in terms of her journey as much as his journey in terms of trying to be a wannabe kind of yakuza gang member. Her character is a bit of a kind of enigma, it's a bit of a mystery. You don't know who really she is, you don't really know her background, you don't know what she's doing or what her ambitions are. She's just someone who's enjoying life essentially. She takes the kind of the boss's car because she's curious about kind of American automobiles and takes it for a spin, and she's kind of speaks her mind, and she's curious about the kind of the automatic weapon. They're just playing until later on, and she just is very flirtatious and very open, and she's just someone who has a really good kind of energy and charisma, bounces off each other quite well. And even though he tries to be kind of a macho type kind of character and be the kind of the brooding kind of yakuza character that we've seen many times before, he just can't really do it. And he tries to do it, he attempts to do it, and keeps failing because of just the natural chemistry these two characters have, and being the fact that they have a real blossoming kind of romantic kind of a love story throughout the film that is quite untraditional and a bit kind of odd at times, but it just kind of feels natural for the 90s, and just it feels very spontaneous and random, and it feels like a connection. It feels like a general kind of an honest reflection of just two people at a time and a place that just come together. And I think it's just as important for her as it is for him for have that connection in the film. And I love all their scenes together, especially the more obvious pink nature kind of erotic scenes that do happen within the film, which is, I'm not really going to argue, which she's known for doing, and she did it within Door 2 and obviously Robotrix as well, where she's does a really good job of having kind of Hong Kong and Japanese kind of collaborations between different directors and kind of other projects. And I think she's just really good in the film, and I think she definitely captivates a real kind of genuine, honest, grounded person. And I love the last kind of third act of the film, which I won't get into too much, but there's a really good, nice little moment that I really appreciate, and I think it's sold really well. And I think the credit to these kind of young performers in the film are really kind of selling a very untraditional, very unconventional, sort of uncool kind of yakuza film that ends up being one of the best in that kind of genre. Essentially, it's so different, so kind of honest, and I think it's a good reflection of the youth of Japanese cinema during that time. I think it's a good reflection of the mocking nature of what it means to be yakuza. There's a great line very early on in the film saying, working hard being a yakuza basically means fuck all. And that has never been more apparent and accurate to what we know from more traditional type yakuza-based films, based on real life as well, because it all ends in doom and gloom. It all ends in tragedy, and you're sacrificing decades of your life. You're putting your blood and sweat and tears and your money into a cause, to a family, which ultimately will abandon you or kill you by the end. And it's a very honest reflection of that. And I think there's even a scene in the film which gets a bit meta, I think, during the car, where they're kind of watching a potential yakuza film, traditional third act, or where it goes kind of gun swibs and kind of shoots out and action, all that kind of stuff. And it's a bit more of a wink and a nod and a bit of a meta type of joke on that. And having a film like this, I think it was very appropriate and good timing, really. And I think it's a really, really breezy film and really enjoyable for many, many different reasons, in terms of performances, in terms of the stylized kind of, visual aspects to it, the meta kind of jokes and the commentary about being yakuza. The comedy itself, I think, is just very natural flowing, and I think all the scenes work really, really well, and I think it ticks a lot of boxes for me. So yeah, definitely another win for the V Cinema box set for sure. In terms of the special features, with a brand new filmed interview with Banmei Tamahashi, the writer and director of the film itself. And just like the first film, we have a brand new introduction by Japanese film critic Masashi Takayama, alongside a standard original trailer. In terms of the special features, as mentioned, Banmei Takahashi, the director of this film and the writer, does a 15-minute brand new extra, I believe done in 2024, ready for this edition in terms of the Arrow box set, still on disc 1, and similar to kind of Crime Hunter director is very reflective and very honest, and talks about kind of, you know, his genre and how he likes to bounce between different ones, and how he came about making this film in terms of Taraway, in terms of the V Cinema kind of opportunity. And I like the fact he talks about having his own kind of production company, very untraditional types of films, and just talks about the state of kind of Japanese cinema during that time, during the 90s, being kind of dead on arrival. There was no kind of real budgets for these types of films anymore. You couldn't have the big kind of, you know, Kenji Fukusaka level epics, because they're just, people weren't turning up to the cinema anymore, and VHS was a way of kind of making some money. And Toei Company were basically giving reasonable budgets to established directors who were becoming talent with creative, fresh ideas. And being the fact he said in the interview that he basically was given free range to do whatever film he wanted, and he was surprised because Toei are knowing to doing the more serious, more kind of a stoic kind of, you know, yakuza films, and him doing this type of film was surprising to him, because this wasn't an action film, this wasn't a traditional comedy, this was a more of a reflective piece. And I think he did relatively well from the sounds of it. I think, you know, did well enough to get a sequel not too long after, and finding new talent along the way, and having some of his established kind of, you know, cast that he's had from previous films within kind of Door 1 and 2. One of the things I do appreciate him talking about is this idea of, you know, if I'm going to do an action film, you give me the budget to do an action film. If you're giving me half the budget, or a very small amount to work with, it's practically not worth it. It's not worth me doing. And, you know, we've seen that before within many other films, not just within Japanese cinema, but also Hong Kong cinema, you know, trying to do an action film with basically no budget. And sometimes it can work to that charm. Sometimes it can be an exploitation. Sometimes it can be a bit scrappy, and you can, you know, you can appreciate the effort that's gone into it depending on the project. But, you know, he didn't want to do an action film. He didn't want to do gun shootouts or explosions. He didn't have the budget for that. So he did more of a creative, stylized kind of take on these kind of moments that reflect on the character journey, which is all very, very important. And as you know me, guys, I definitely like my characters, I like my story. Anything else is always secondary, third, fourth, fifth. And I think he focuses on the right things in this film, and I definitely think it's one of his best, absolutely for sure. So it's a really good little extra that dives into that. So that's been my thoughts and opinions on the film itself and the special features. I am down now with disc 1. I will be on disc 2 very soon. What are your thoughts on the film? What do you think of the sequel? Do you think it's better? Do you think it's worse? Do you think it's definitely worth trying to track down? Love to know your thoughts and opinions. Please comment down below. So in the meantime, guys, Amphlett Reviews, signing out.